Hi. It is me. It's Miss Checka, and I think I forgot to do something, so bear with me just a little second. Let's see here. Okay. All right. So, hi, Claire. How are you? Claire, you and I got to talk. We got to talk coding. Maybe this afternoon or tomorrow. You tell me when. So, we're reading a story by O. Henry. And we talked a little bit yesterday about how O. Henry was a writer. He's an American writer. He's famous for short stories. He's not famous for novels. And he had a really wild life. He embezzled from a bank and got arrested. And then on his way to the courthouse, he was on a train on a way to the courthouse and then freaked out and was like, I don't want to go get arrested. So he just took the train all the way to South America and then hid out in South America for several years. And then his wife became deathly ill and he came back to the US to like be with his wife. Oh, there's Tess. Ooh, you made something for me. I'm very excited. Anyway, that's why he came back, and then he had to like go to the trial and go to jail. So he was incarcerated, and the whole time they had a kid, and they never told the kid where her dad was. So anyway, yeah, O. Henry he just like all of his stories are so, I don't know, normal, and then you find out his life story, and it's really pretty wild. What was the other thing I was going to say? There's this phrase that we use sometimes to refer to a government that's really corrupt or disorganized or whatever, and it's Banana Republic. And O. Henry came up with that because he was living in South America while he was hiding out from the law. Claire, yeah, imagine being that kid. Yeah, I've always wondered, would it be more damaging to, like, I would think it would be much more damaging to think that your dad just like doesn't want to see you or is like too busy for you than to just know that he's incarcerated and cannot, anyway. But all of that is the backstory to a retrieved Reformation, which is where we started yesterday. Oh, Claire, why is there a store called Banana Republic? Well, if you look up old ads from Banana Republic, like from the 80s, the clothes were all in the style of what you would picture you would wear in like a very warm tropical place. Like yeah, I mean, look it up. Anyway, we might return to the theme of Banana Republic because I think it's like another backstory that's very interesting. But for now, let's just recap. The story from yesterday is that our story starts out with this guy getting out of jail, Jimmy Valentine, and he's super stylish. He's got a lot of swagger. He won't admit that he has ever robbed anything. And the warden is like, make better choices, start a new life. And he's like, no, of course I'm not going to. He gets out of jail. The first thing that he does is he puts on his like swanky outfit, and then he goes and gets his suitcase, which has been hidden the whole time he's been in jail, which is only like 3 months out of a 4-year sentence because he's well connected. And it has a suitcase of $900 worth of custom made tools to rob banks with. And then he goes on a bank robbing spree, and the detective who had caught him in the first place starts to be on his trail because he's like, I know who's been doing these robberies. It's Jimmy Valentine. And then he goes to a little town where he's going to go rob the bank. But as soon as he gets off the train, he sees this beautiful girl and falls in love with her. And it turns out that she is the bank owner's daughter. So he's like, I'm never going to rob a bank again. He falls in love with her. He opens a shoe shop, which is hilarious because he had learned to like make shoes while he was in jail. And he just like totally becomes reformed. He's there for a full year. He changes his name to Ralph. I can't remember, Ralph something. And he's going to marry the girl. And when we left off the story, he had sent off a letter to an old criminal associate saying, meet me in this and such town because I'm going to give you this suitcase of bank robbing tools because I'll never need it again because, I've turned over a new leaf because true love, et cetera, et cetera. And dun, 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 the detective had come to town and was finally going to catch him. That was a lot of backstory. Okay, so let me find our spot in the story. Dear old pal, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to start the paragraph before we left off yesterday. On the Monday night after Jimmy wrote this letter, Ben Price, as the detective, jogged unobtrusively into Elmore in a livery buggy. He lounged about town in his quiet way until he found out what he wanted to know. From the drugstore across from the Spencer's shoe store, he got a good look at Ralph D. Spencer. So Ralph D. Spencer is the name that Jimmy Valentine is going by. Going to marry the banker's daughter, are you, Jimmy? Said Ben softly to himself. Well, I don't know. The next morning, Jimmy took breakfast at the Adamses. This is the family, the bank-owning family, where he's the fiance of the oldest daughter. He was going to Little Rock that day to order his wedding suit and buy something nice for Annabelle. That would be the first time he had left town since he came to Elmore. It had been more than a year now since those last professional jobs, and he thought he could safely venture out. After breakfast, quite a family party went downtown together. Mr. Adams, Annabelle, Jimmy, and Annabelle's married sister and her two little girls, aged 5 and 9. They came by the hotel where Jimmy still boarded, and he ran up to his room and brought along his suitcase. Then they went on to the bank. There stood Jimmy's horse and buggy and Dolph Gibson, who was going to drive him over to the railroad station. All went inside the high carved oak railings into the banking room, Jimmy included, for Mr. Adams's future son-in-law was welcome anywhere. The clerks were pleased to be greeted by the good-looking, agreeable young man who was to marry Miss Annabelle. Jimmy set his suitcase down. Annabelle, whose heart was bubbling with happiness and lively youth, put on Jimmy's hat and picked up the suitcase. Wouldn't I make a nice drummer, said Annabelle. My, Ralph, how heavy it is. Feels like it was full of gold bricks. Oh, lots of nickel-plated shoehorns in there, said Jimmy coolly. That's what I'm going to return. Thought I'd save express charges by taking them up. I'm getting awfully economical. All right, so 3 things. Number 1, a shoehorn is that little metal thing that you can use to get your shoe on and off your foot, kind of if it gets stuck. And number 2, that's a total lie because that suitcase, as we know, is his bank robbing stuff. But he doesn't want his fiance to know, his past as an ex-con, bank robber. So he's telling her that it's shoehorns. And number 3, Tess, very exciting. I'm going to ask questions about at the end. Okay, so Claire, yeah, to keep his shoes stretched out. The Elmore Bank had just put in a new safe and vault. Mr. Adams was very proud of it and insisted on an inspection by everyone. The vault was a small one, but it had a new patented door. It fastened with 3 solid steel bolts thrown simultaneously with a single handle and had a time lock. Mr. Adams beamingly explained its workings to Mr. Spencer, who showed a courteous but not too intelligent interest. The 2 children, May and Agatha, were delighted by the shining metal and funny clock and knobs. So not all banks, you can't see the vault in all banks when you walk in the front door, but if you have ever seen a bank vault, the walls are like this thick. And sometimes, and I'm talking in modern times, and sometimes the door to open them will have like a wheel that turns. But in old timey banks, you'd have a safe, you'd have the vault would be like the room where you'd have the safe, and to have a timer on it, to have a clock, means that like you could only open it on certain times of day. They're intense. While they were thus engaged, Ben Price, the detective, sauntered in and leaned on his elbow, looking casually inside between the railings. He told the teller he didn't want anything. He's just waiting for a man he knew. Suddenly, there was a scream, or a scream or two from the women, and a commotion. Unperceived by the elders, May, the 9-year-old girl, in a spirit of play, had shut Agatha in the vault. She had then shot the bolts and turned the knob of the combination, as she had seen Mr. Adams do. The old banker sprang to the handle and tugged at it for a moment. "The door can't be opened," he groaned. "The clock hasn't been wound, nor the combination set." Agatha's mother screamed hysterically. "Hush," said Mr. Adams, raising his trembling hand. "All be quiet for a moment. Agatha," he called as loudly as he could, "listen to me." During the following silence, they could just hear the faint sound of the child wildly shrieking in the dark vault in a panic of terror. "Oh, my precious darling," wailed the mother. "She will die of fright. Open the door. Oh, break it open. Can't you men do something?" "There isn't a man nearer than Little Rock who can open that door," said Mr. Adams in a shaking voice. "My God, Spencer, what shall we do? That child, she can't stand it long in there. There isn't enough air. And besides, she'll go into convulsions from fright." So guys, remember, it's brand new. Like they just had it installed. So there is no combination. So even though he's the owner and it's his vault, he can't just like, because it hadn't even been set. Agatha's mother, frantic now, beat the door of the vault with her hands. Somebody wildly suggested dynamite. Annabelle turned to Jimmy, her large eyes full of anguish, but not yet despairing. To a woman, nothing seems quite impossible to the powers of the man she worships. "Can't you do something, Ralph? Try, won't you?" He looked at her with a queer, soft smile on his lips and in his keen eyes. "Annabelle," he says, "give me that rose you're wearing, will you?" Hardly believing that she heard him aright, she unpinned the bud from the bosom of her dress and placed it in his hands. Jimmy stuffed it into his vest pocket, threw off his coat, and pulled up his shirt sleeves. With that act, Ralph D. Spencer passed away, and Jimmy Valentine took his place. "Get away from the door, all of you," he commanded shortly. He set his suitcase on the table and opened it out flat. From that time on, he seemed to be unconscious of the presence of anyone else. He laid out the shining queer implement swiftly and orderly, whistling softly to himself as he always did when at work. In a deep silence and immovable, the others watched him as if under a spell. So this is huge, because right up until that moment, he was like, "I'm Ralph Spencer. I sell shoes. This suitcase is full of, shoehorns." So he has a choice there. He can either let the kid suffocate, in the vault and go free, and he'll just be Ralph Spencer and nobody will ever know. Or he can save the kid, but then he loses the girl because, now she's going to know that he was a bank robber. Her family's going to know. And Claire, he didn't die. It's that he like Ralph, Jimmy Valentine is Ralph Spencer. Ralph Spencer is the fake name that he gave himself when he wanted to have like a new identity without crime. So when he puts the little rosebud in and says, here's my bank robbing tools, then it's that Ralph Spencer dies metaphorically, but really he's getting his old identity as Jimmy Valentine, guy who is expert in robbing banks, and therefore a guy who is expert in like opening vaults. In a minute, Jimmy's pet drill was biting smoothly into the steel door. In 10 minutes, breaking his own burglarious record, he threw back the bolts and opened the door. Agatha, almost collapsed but safe, was gathered into her mother's arms. Jimmy Valentine put on his coat and walked outside the railings towards the front door. As he went, he thought he heard a faraway voice that he once knew call, "Ralph!" But he never hesitated. At the door, a big man stood somewhat in his way. "Hello, Ben," said Jimmy, still with his strange smile. Now remember, Ben Price is the detective that put him away. So Jimmy Valentine knows now he's lost the girl and he's caught. "Got around at last, have you? Well, let's go. I don't know that it makes much difference now." And then Ben Price acted rather strangely. "Guess you're mistaken, Mr. Spencer," he said. "Don't believe I recognize you. Your buggy's waiting for you, ain't it?" And Ben Price turned and strolled down the street. The end. So that means that Ben Price, the detective, let him go. Because he saw that maybe he had changed his character since he was willing to rescue the kid and lose the girl. But there's a lot of questions still at the end that are never answered. So for instance, does the girl still marry him now that she knows that, that suitcase is not full of shoehorns? It was actually filled with bank robbing stuff. So what do you guys think? Do you guys think that he made the right choice? One, and do you think that Annabelle is still going to marry him, or if she's going to feel like you're a bank robber? So I'm interested to know what you think. Let's see. I'm also, as I'm waiting for you guys to type, very curious to know, Tess, what it is that you have for me, but I'm very excited that it has a Sally Ride stamp because I love space. I can't tell if y'all are typing or thinking. Claire, what do you think? If your boyfriend turned out to be a bank robber, but he rescued your little sister, would you still marry him? Oh, Tess isn't going to tell. All right. Okay. Tess would still marry him because he rescued the little sister, right? I mean, to me, I think that this is a story that is kind of asking a question: do people really change or not? Do people really change? Especially people who made bad choices in the past. And one of the reasons I wanted to tell y'all that backstory about the writer, about O. Henry, is because he kind of lived that, right? He made big old bad choice when he, embezzled from the bank and then ran away in South America and all this stuff. But then he went on to become a writer. He's not famous for being O. Henry bank robber. He's famous for being O. Henry writer. So, I don't know. Some people think that, if you make bad choices and that's it forever, you're just like a bad person. And other people think well, people are capable of change and making better choices. But I think the story kind of weighs it. Anyway, I had a good time with you guys with this O. Henry story. I don't know what we're going to read tomorrow. And I am open if you have requests on if you want to learn about a particular topic, or there's a particular writer, or you want to do more space or garden stuff, I'm open to it. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up for now. So you guys have a really, really, really good day, and I will see you tomorrow. Do not go robbing any banks, but do use your bank robbing skills for good if the situation calls for it. Make good choices. All right. Bye, guys.